Lilith is probably the most famous of all female demons in the Western esoteric tradition. Before we start, we should have in mind that this is such a potent and vast topic that it can't be covered in a single reasonably lengthy video, so I apologize if I left out something important. Feel free to share your experiences and opinions regarding this topic and consider liking and subscribing for more content like this. Let's begin.
First encountered in ancient Sumerian lore, she is shown naked in her oldest depictions with prominent breasts and unbound hair, symbolizing her untamed sexual force, which is the key to her initiatory gnosis. In medieval legends, she appears as the serpent in the Garden of Eve, tempting the first human couple to taste the fruit from the tree of knowledge, the first seducer and the first adversary in the history of mankind. In the Jewish tradition, she is the first wife of Adam and the mother of all demons and abominations of the earth, the Queen of Sheba from the legend of King Solomon, and the wife of God himself in absence of the Matronit. In European folklore, we meet her as the presiding goddess of the witches Sabbath and the female leader of the wild hunt. When it comes to Jungian psychology, she represents the dark side of the anima archetype. She is identified with Medusa, who kills men with her deadly gaze, the harpy who shrieks in the night, Lamia who devours her lovers, and other terrifying bloodthirsty hags and man-eating monsters. Lilith represents a sexual demon or femme fatale with a strong character, while Eve on the other side represents an ideal subjugated woman. She becomes a symbol of great power, feared or loved, or both, by people all over the world. She has so many masks that each time we think we already know her, she reveals a new one, showing a completely different aspect of herself and laughing at our ignorance. The earliest mention of an entity with a name similar to that of Lilith is found in the Sumerian king list from the 3rd century BC, starting that the father of the famous hero Gilgamesh was a Lilu demon, a king of an incubus, but these sources are questionable. From old sources, we should also mention a passage in the Bible written in Isaac, chapter 34, verse 14, which supposedly refers to Lilith, although its validity is often questioned as well. That is the only possible reference to Lilith found in the entire Bible. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, and Lilith also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. In the book Lilith by Asenath Mason, he writes, "Then, however, we meet her through the Hebrew lore. In the Talmud, we find references to beings called the Lilin, who have a human form with wings, possibly related to Lilith, although Raphael Patai in the Hebrew goddess writes that the name Lilin was the masculine plural of Lili. The Talmud also contains the most famous myth of Lilith, developed further in the alphabet of Ben Sira, according to which she was the first wife of Adam, the one before Eve. In this legend, Lilith and Adam were created together from the soil of the earth. They were equal in their creation but could find no happiness or understanding together. When Adam wished to lie down with her, she refused to lay beneath him, and since he was still trying to overpower her, she left him and fled the Garden of Eden. This happened in a rather dramatic way. She rose into the air with fury, screaming the secret name of God, and flew away to settle on the shore of the Red Sea, the mythical land of Zemargad, where she started to mate with the demons, giving birth to hundreds of demon spirits each day. Lilith was believed to be the bringer of knowledge to mankind. She was said to have spoken the name of God, which was forbidden to be uttered. This suggests she already had prior knowledge of this name beforehand.
In a certain way, Lilith is responsible for the evolution of consciousness of humankind by tricking Eve and thus getting them expelled from the Garden of Eden, which was all-encompassing for the ego consciousness. The story also teaches us that all systems are prone to failure and that they can't protect us from evil.
We can also see how Lilith's spirit has been revitalized from the 60s with the feminist movement. Nowadays, there is a paradigm that suggests that women should be independent, but it can go to extremes on occasion. So we have women who reject the idea of being in a relationship at all. My opinion as a woman is that psychologically we should integrate both Eve and Lilith and become friends with both of them in order to achieve stability in the duality. Seeing this, God sent 3 angels after her, Senoi, Sansenoi, and Semangelof. They found her on the shore of the Red Sea, determined to fetch her back and drown her in the water. But neither of this happened. Instead, they made an agreement, according to which Lilith promised to spare the life of newborn children of Adam if they were protected with amulets bearing the names of the 3 angels. She also gave her consent to the death of 100 of her own children every day. In return, the angels left her alone and she became the queen of Zemargad and the mother of all demonic spirits on the earth from that moment until the present day. The Talmud also describes her story further. When the first humans were exiled from the Garden of Eden, Adam embarked on a period of penitence which lasted for 130 years. At that time he fasted and refrained from intercourse with Eve, but he could not control his involuntary nocturnal emissions, which were caused by Lilith and Nama visiting him at night and stealing his semen to create evil spirits. At the same time, male spirits came and impregnated Eve, who therefore became the mother of innumerable demonic spirits called the plagues of mankind. In the Hebrew lore, Lilith is the mother of all evil in the world, and it is often believed that it was either her or Samael, her demonic spouse, who came to Adam and Eve in the form of the serpent, tempting them to taste the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Then Samael and the serpent lay with Eve and conceived Cain, the first murderer, and sometimes it is thought that Eve was at that time possessed by Lilith, and thus she and her demonic spouse are the true parents of the first man in the line of the devil's descendants. On the other hand, it is worth noting that succubi and incubi that sought Adam and Eve are not named in any of the sources from the Talmudic period, and it was later that Lilith became associated with these nocturnal attacks and thus became the mythical prototype of a demonic seductress.
The fear of Lilith was a popular belief at that time, and there are many findings from the 6th and 7th century CE containing incantations and charms against her or Liliths, which also points at the fact that Lilith at first was not a single being, but the name for a group of spirits. This data is included e.g. in Aramaic incantation texts found on baubles containing magical texts inscribed on amulets and carved in other items that were meant to protect the owner, his house and his family. According to these texts, she and her demonic children were succubi and incubi visiting sleeping men and women at night, and they were especially dangerous to women during certain periods of their sexual life cycle, before defloration, during menstruation and the time of pregnancy, etc. A rough drawing on one of the Jewish baubles shows Lilith naked, with long, loose hair, large breasts, exposed genitals and chained ankles. It was believed that once Lilith, or Lilin, succeeded in attaching themselves to a man or woman, they acquired the right of cohabitation and had to be given a letter of divorce to be expelled. Jealous of their lover's spouse, they attacked the children born of the normal human wedlock, plagued and strangled them, and also prevented the birth of children by causing miscarriages, barrenness, or complications during childbirth.
The image of Lilith prevailed for many centuries, spreading from Babylonia to the east, into Persia and other nearby areas. However, throughout the Middle Ages, her role evolved and changed in a significant way, and the early Kabbalistic writings from the 13th century onward no longer refer to her as a lesser demon associated with sexual activities, but talk about Lilith as the dark side of the Shekinah and the spouse of God himself. Lilith's relationship with Samael is also the subject of many myths and legends. In the writings of the two brothers, Jacob and Isaac Cohen, especially in the treatise of the left emanation, she and Samael are described as born together, as one emanation, in the shape of an androgynous, double-faced being, forever joined in sexual act through an intermediary, a mystical blind dragon, Taniniver. This mystical marriage of Lilith and Samael is believed to produce a being known as the Beast, Angel Satan, or the other god. This creature is sometimes thought to have been the serpent in the Garden of Eden and the first initiator of mankind. While Adam and Eve reflected that which is above, Samael and Lilith represented something older and more primordial, like the void that they came from. The same sources that speak about their relationship say that God separated Samael and Lilith, castrated him, and made her barren, but they constantly long for each other and have found a way to mate through the blind dragon, who corresponds to the biblical Leviathan. This union of Samael, Lilith, and Nineveh is thought to constitute the primordial being that preceded the creation and can destroy the whole world at any moment.
An interesting thing to note is also Lilith's relationship with God. According to Kabbalistic lore, God sent away the Matronit, his wife, and took the slave woman in her place. This slave woman is believed to be Lilith. She is called the alien crown and fought to rule the other place, which is a reference to Sitra Achra, the Matronit in rabbinical literature, as an aspect of the Shekinah, the feminine side of God. Her role is complex, and discussing it will require a separate video. Suffice to say, in medieval Kabbalah, Shekinah is believed to embrace both bright and dark aspects, as in the Zohar we read. The Shekinah is at times called the mother, at times the slave woman, and at times the king's daughter. This gives us a new perspective on Lilith. She is a part of the divine feminine, not an adversary of God, but an emanation of his divine essence. Indeed, her role in the Kabbalah is often ambiguous, as she is sometimes associated with the angel Baznai, linked with the order of the cherubim, and one of her titles is the Messenger of God, which is a mysterious aspect in which she acts on behalf of God as a force of retribution, similar to Nemesis. The Shekinah herself can manifest as the Matronit, which is her bright side, or as Lilith, which is her dark counterpart, and only the circumstances can determine whether she assumes the good or evil form. The Kabbalistic legend is similar to the modern psychological interpretation of Lilith myth. In Jungian psychology, she is the anima, the feminine aspect of the unconscious mind. According to Carl Gustav Jung, when Adam rejected this part of the self, she turned to the shadow, Samael, assumed the demonic shape, and began to strive for domination. This is confirmed by the tale from the Talmud, in which Adam is created as an androgynous being, with the male and the female contained within him. Lilith can therefore be viewed as the feminine aspect of man. Lilith became the lover of Asmodeus in the early Middle Ages, mostly through the Jewish folk tradition. Asmodeus himself had already been associated in this tradition with promiscuity and fornication, and he is mentioned in the Book of Tobit as a demon that lusts for a woman named Sarah. She rejects his advances, repelled by the idea of becoming a demon's mistress, and decides to get married, but Asmodeus kills her husband on their wedding night. She marries 7 men, and each of them is killed by the demon before the marriage is consummated, until he is finally defeated by their successor. This is most likely the legend that gave rise to the belief that Asmodeus is the demon of carnal desire associated with lust of the 7 deadly sins, tempting people to all sorts of promiscuity and deprivation. On the other hand, Asmodeus is a spirit of fire, one of the Qliphothic demon lords, and he is believed to rule the realm of Golachab, the dark counterpart of Geburah on the Tree of Night. The merging of Lilith, the queen of fornication, and the fiery king of lust was therefore inevitable in the contemporary myth and legend. According to Augustine Colmet, Lilith has connections with early views of vampires and sorcery. Some learned men have thought they discovered some vestiges of vampirism in the remotest antiquity, but all that they say of it does not come near what is related to the vampires. The Laminae and Strigae, the sorceress whom they accused of sucking the blood of living persons and of thus causing their death, the magicians who were said to cause the death of newborn children by charms and malignant spells, are nothing less than what we understand by the name of vampires. Even were it to be owned that these Laminae and Strigae have really existed, which we do not believe can ever be well proved. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider liking, sharing and subscribing. Thanks for rebuilding Olympus.